Hi there. I'm Joel Carboni, founder and president of Green Project Management. I'm very happy to be able to join you today, even though it is in this virtual setting. I was meant to be via video feed live, but due to circumstances out of my control, I must address you via video. My sincere apologies for this. To start, I want to thank our amazing partners, Innovatel, for inviting me to participate in this event. And I wish, honestly, I was physically there in Italy, my absolute favorite country in the world. To start, I'll share a little bit about me. My grandparents immigrated to the United States from Napoli in 1922. So I am an Italian American and have a very strong Italian heritage in my family. I've been working in project, portfolio, and program management since 1997. And actually, I began my focus on sustainability in the Boy Scouts, where I trained and worked as an ecology director, teaching youth in 1994. This is something that I'm proud to still be doing 30 years later, even though I'm only 30 years old. Wink, wink. I actually participated on a sustainability panel this summer for PMI globally from a Boy Scout camp with all the noise in the background, which was actually quite a lot of fun. So early in my professional career, I worked for Anderson Consulting, which is now known as Accenture. And my focus professionally was on technology projects. I was what you would call the accidental project manager. I sort of became a project manager, not planning to. I was sort of thrown into the role. The first work package I was ever assigned to was the development of the Windows XP operating system. This was part of a joint venture with Microsoft. And as my career progressed, I was at odds with the emphasis on constraints as measures of project success. Because constraints give little to no regard to the environment. To me, this seemed a little bit off. I got involved in the Earth Charter Summit in 2000. And the words in the preamble really spoke to me, to the depths of who I am. I want to read just a little bit about that to you. In the preamble of the Earth Charter, it states, "We stand at a critical moment in Earth's history, a time when humanity must choose its future. As the world becomes increasingly interdependent and fragile, the future at once holds great peril and great promise. To move forward, we must recognize that in the midst of a magnificent diversity of cultures and life forms, we are one human family and one Earth community with a common destiny. We must join together to bring forth a sustainable global society founded on respect for nature, universal human rights, economic justice, and a culture of peace. Towards this end, it is imperative that we, the peoples of Earth, declare our responsibility to one another, to the greater community of life, and to future generations." Those words ring even louder 22 years later. I would state, though, that we are at a critical moment in humanity's history. We must choose our own future. And we need leaders who will make it their mission to advance regenerative development sustainably. If we are to achieve any sort of sustainable life for us or our home planet. In my keynote, I will address sustainability strategy and green project management. Now, I could share a PowerPoint and speak to that, but what I want to do rather is speak directly to you and share some of my practical experience as a way to inspire each of you to take up this important mission as your own. I will also share some interesting facts and information that you can use to empower your projects. More important than the tools, as they are pointless without an impassioned person behind them, is you. That's why I want to speak directly to you. So, GPM was born in 2009. We were a think tank at that time, and we emerged ultimately as a social enterprise in 2011. As such, we have been involved in the sustainability movement all over the world. Each of us at GPM are activists who get our hands dirty. We were a party to the Paris Accord, COP21, COP22, COP23, we're the COP system. We participated in the working groups to author and write the UN SDGs. And we are collaborating with NGOs, nonprofits, and academic institutions working on what's next all over the globe. Now, I mentioned the SDGs. The SDGs are interesting to me. I was very excited to work on number 3, climate action. And when I got to the working session, together with my colleagues, the moderator opened the session by thanking the corporate sponsor of the working group. And when they did that, I felt sort of a sinking feeling in my stomach. You see, I live in Michigan, here in the United States. And in Michigan, the sponsor, that company, pays annually $200 US to extract millions and millions of liters of water from our aquifers, so they can just bottle it in plastic and sell it back to us at the cost of $2 a bottle. They're making millions of dollars and flooding landfills with plastic while depleting our water system. I could not believe that they would be accepted as a sponsor on an initiative this important. So I stood up and I walked out. Fortunately, there was space for me on number 12, which was responsible consumption. And that was really more my focus anyway. So in the end, it actually worked out quite well. In any case, the SDGs are great, but they're also a little bit strange. Let me explain to you what I mean. Take number 1, for example, no poverty. There are 3 core goals in SDG number 1, no poverty. Eradicate extreme poverty for all. Actually, extreme poverty for all people everywhere. Great, right? Reduce by at least half the proportion of men, women, and children living in poverty. Okay, great. I think everyone agrees those first 2 are very important to achieve. Third, reduce the vulnerability of the poor to economic, social, and environmental shocks and disasters. Okay, We all agree with that as well, right? Those first three make a lot of sense. Let's do that SDG number one. What they fail to do is address the root cause or why poverty exists, and that is because of broken socioeconomic systems. We can apply all the bandages and fixes we want, but until we achieve income equality using circular economic models, poverty will persist. So you can't solve an SDG or achieve an SDG without addressing the root cause of why it exists in the first place. Okay, so what do? The answer is quite simple. Every single profession must understand the impact of their work. Now, for us in project management, it is massive. Research conducted this year found that projects will account for 57% of global GDP by 2030. So, what is the impact of that 48 trillion euro if used responsibly, if used sustainably, if used to drive social and economic progress while regenerating biodiversity and at-risk ecosystems? Think about it. We could eliminate the root causes that require the SDGs and mitigate the climate crisis in an instant. But we all have to own it. And that is the challenge we face. Earlier this year, we at GPM released some research. And this is some research we did over the past year. And we were pleased to have had over 30,000 participants take part and provide their input. You can actually download this for free off of our website at greenprojectmanagement.org. But I want to share some things that really stood out to me. One thing that stood out more than anything was that among respondents, 38% reported that their projects had been impacted by climate change in 2021. That is up from just 4% 4 years earlier. Among portfolio managers, it was 49%. And overall, 99.99% of project managers stated the project management profession is not doing enough to combat climate change. So, there it is. We have a responsibility, a duty to do more, but it has to be practical. We need tools, we need methods. A few years back, I was giving a lecture at a university in Nice, located in the south of France. I was explaining how to use our sustainable project management tool called the P5 Standard, also free and available to you in Italian off of our website, greenprojectmanagement.org. And I did this by facilitating an impact analysis session and developing some project KPI as some examples. There were probably around 300 people in the lecture hall, and in the middle of my lecture, one of the attendees raised his hand, and so I called on him. He said, I'm an agile project manager, and I manage software development projects. And my projects are for the airline industry. He said to me, what you're sharing doesn't apply to my work. I just don't see how this affects me as a practitioner. So I paused a moment. I usually carry this, pull it up here. I usually carry this football with me as a prop for just this sort of occasion. So I tossed it to him and I asked him to tell me the first one that he saw. And it ended up being income inequality. So I asked him, do you see any correlation between income inequality and any part of your work as an agile project manager? And so the audience sort of looked at him and was waiting to hear the answer. And he said, no. But he said it in a way that was more like, duh, no, you idiot. So at that point, all eyes were back on me to see how I would respond. Even the moderator, former PMI President Greg Balistrero, who was presenting there as well that day, looked at me with a facial expression that basically said, let's see how you respond to this one. So I took a second, I thought of a couple scenarios, and I engaged him. I asked him, you're an agile project manager, yes? He said, yeah. I asked him, is all the software built here in your office, or do you contract out any of the development anywhere else in the world? And he said, well, we build most of it, but some things we do have to contract out. So there it was. I said, do you oversee contractor selection processes? He said, I'm part of the selection team, the committee. I said, okay. Think of any of your current projects. Where are your contractors located? He said, well, they're all over. Where? I said. We have several in India and in Pakistan. So this is where the rubber met the road. This is where it all comes to a head. So I paused him. I said, okay, do you have policies and procedures in place to ensure that individuals who contribute to your software are paid a living wage or have safe working environments? Do you maybe have a human rights policy for your project governance? No, he said. Okay. When you select a winning bid for an API or piece of code or piece of software, is it typically cost-based? He said, yes. So I said, do you see where I'm going here? If you measure the impacts of your project procurement and ensure that human rights adherence is part of your KPI, you also ensure that your software leans towards socially responsible and sustainable, and therefore directly supports SDG number 10, reduced inequality. Specifically, goal 10.4, adopt policies, especially fiscal, wage, and social protection. So you can see there's a direct correlation between project work and achieving the SDGs, but it gets a little bit trickier than that. So I said, do you now see how this applies to you? And he gave me a nod, yes, yes. So then I asked, how many of you in the audience work in IT? Or how many of you are agilistas or agilists, I guess as you call them? Most raised their hand. So I asked the crowd, does this make sense? I got a resounding yes. So everyone now saw the relationship between what they're trying to achieve in the SDGs and their actual work. The key here, and why I'm sharing this with you, is that we can only manage what we measure. And since forever ago, sustainability has been largely ignored, at least in the project profession. It shouldn't have been, because the first time projects were written about were in 1697, when Daniel Defoe, who was the author of Robinson Crusoe, which is a great fictional novel, also published, quote, an essay on projects, writing that projects are a way of solving societal challenges. It is interesting. It's a very interesting read. So if you Google it, you can look it up. You can easily find it. It's not very long, but it's very to the point. Truth be told, though, our focus is to go beyond sustainability, beyond green, to what is referred to as regenerative sustainability. That's where we have to go. As you can see from this diagram I'm putting here on the screen, conventional project management that has a focus on constraints and have been used since the Industrial Revolution, maybe even before, contribute to the degeneration, and practices that emphasize value creation are regenerative in nature. The green movement had incremental improvements, but not much more. Sustainable is literally don't do any harm, but doesn't necessarily mean you must do good. Restorative is incrementally, think planting trees, right? Where regenerative is to revitalize ecosystems. There's a big difference there. Revitalizing ecosystems so that way they can thrive. This is what our tools and our methods are designed to do. Our P5 standard has been downloaded over 600,000 times and is available in 13 different languages, including Italian. It is free, and so are the templates that go with it. You can get it by scanning this QR code here on the screen, or directly from our website at www.greenprojectmanagement.org/P5. In our approach, which can be integrated into any method or any approach for projects, we advocate for getting an understanding of the impact and scoring its level of impact, developing an action plan for risk mitigation, assigning an action owner, and then communicating the outcomes. As this is the sort of materiality that is required for ESG reporting. If your organization wants to avoid greenwashing and provide dual materiality that's really critical for the EU mandates coming for corporations, this is what you have to do. In our model, there are 5 layers or levels in the P5. The first layer is the project layer. If you're using the P5 for portfolio or program management, it can easily be changed as the process we use for assessment is pretty much the same. The second layer is the impact lens. This is the context from which you will be assessing the impacts for sustainability in the project. P5 primarily at the product impacts and product process impacts is where we're looking at. The third layer is the 3 sustainability domains, and these are most common: people, planet, profit, social, people, planet, or environment. So, but we also add prosperity. So we tend to call them social, environmental, and prosperity. The fourth layer is the subcategories. These span the entire sustainability spectrum, over 44 different ways to measure, and cover everything from human rights to business agility and everything in between. Finally, the 5th layer is where we really dig down deep. Similar to the periodic table of elements, P5 has specific criteria for each element. That is what makes this model very, very unique. The first one, the product lifespan. We're looking at its intended lifespan of whatever it is you're trying to build and the impact of that lifespan. The second, product servicing. We're looking at the impacts of the operations and the maintenance. The third is project process. And here, we're looking at how efficient it is and also the impacts. The fourth, the project process. We're looking at how effective it is and what are the impacts. The fifth, to round out the P5, the project process, we're looking at how fair it is. So we're looking at 3 different ways to look at project processes and what their impacts are. Each of these lenses must be accounted for in the analysis. This approach has benefited a wide range of organizations all over the world. And through our GPM 360 assessment model, we are starting to see the difference. I'll give some examples. From the Russian Atomic Agency, this is last year before the Ukraine situation broke out, of course. The National Basketball Association here in the United States, pet food companies, and actually today I'm en route to a top 5 oil and gas company to help them and integrate these tools. Ministries of education. So organizations that engage us and our partners are seeing tangible benefit to how they work and the products and services that they produce by using our methods and tools. These tools will make your projects more sustainable. And if used right, can also improve your bottom line as well. I want to highlight one project in particular that used this approach and was able to clean up one of the most polluted rivers in Vietnam. In 2008, only 10% of the wastewater in Hanoi, Vietnam was treated. Although septic tanks are often provided during construction of new developments, they are not maintained, and eventually they discharge untreated wastewater into the water table, but specifically into the rivers. Untreated wastewater, together with polluted stormwater runoff that gets directly into the rivers, causes severe pollution. And this is in heavily populated areas. The pollution level in the Kim Nagu River and Set River had reached an alarming level. In view of the severity of the issues, this company SSP had come out with an engineering solution in line with the existing Hanoi City sewerage master plan to address this issue. They wanted to do some mixed development in that area, and they couldn't do so over a dirty river. So, with the objective to build a lot of structures, land use, condominiums, retail places, using the P5 impact assessment that we use, that we taught them, the project was able to align the core project objectives with impact areas for sustainability to ensure sustainable delivery while mapping directly to the UN SDGs, their goals and targets, for allowing them to do dual materiality reporting. This is what the EU is mandating, and this is what you can now do with our tools. There's an old saying that in theory and practice are the same. In practice, though, they are not. I say that because the tools and methods we are using and encourage you to use are being used all over the world and are making a real difference. It is critical that green project management be used to ensure humanity's future, as we are the drivers of sustainable change. So let's all make a difference together. Let's work together to ensure that our planet is habitable for our children and our grandchildren. I want to thank all of you so very much, and I wish you a great rest of your conference, a fantastic rest of the year, and I hope to be in Italy very, very soon so I can meet you all in person. Again, thank you.